In 1868, 7-year-old Sarah Bennett huddled beneath her mother's quilt, the only shield between her and the violence that claimed her entire family outside their Nebraska homestead. Discovered days later by a Cheyenne warrior who had once worn the Union blue, she became the unlikeliest daughter to a man whose own people barely accepted his return. The settlers had written the final chapter for this orphaned child, a pitiful existence in some distant orphanage. But Two Stars refused to accept that ending for the trembling blue-eyed girl whose spirit reminded him of the eagle that had once guided him home from war. What awaited them wasn't the peace they sought, but years of suspicion from two worlds that saw only enemies when they looked at each other. Yet fate has a peculiar way of bringing together souls who recognize courage in unexpected places. This is the story of how a child born to settlers and a Cheyenne veteran scarred by America's bloodiest conflict forged a bond that would change the frontier in ways no treaty ever could. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The November wind howled across the Nebraska plains, finding every gap in the Bennett family's newly constructed cabin. Sarah pulled the patchwork quilt tighter around her small shoulders as she listened to her father nail boards across the windows. "Are they coming, Papa?" she whispered, her 7-year-old voice barely audible above the wind's moan. Thomas Bennett paused, the hammer suspended mid-swing. A former schoolteacher who had brought his family west with dreams of prosperity, he now wore the weathered expression of a man who realized too late the true cost of frontier ambition. "Just a precaution, little one," he answered, though his eyes betrayed the lie. "Marshal Wilson warned all the homesteaders to secure their properties tonight. Probably nothing." Sarah's mother, Elizabeth, placed another log on the fire, her movements betraying none of the fear that had settled into the cabin alongside the evening chill. A woman of remarkable composure, she had already hidden the family's meager valuables beneath the floorboards, their Bible, her wedding silver, and the deed to their 160 acres of windswept prairie. "Sarah," she said calmly, "fetch your brother." From the back room, "It's time for evening prayers." 10-year-old William entered, still clutching the wooden horse their father had carved for his last birthday. Unlike Sarah's golden curls that matched their mother's, William had inherited their father's dark features and serious demeanor. Even at his young age, he understood the fragility of their situation, one of 3 homesteader families who had ventured too far from the protection of Fort Kearney. "Is it because of what happened to the Millers?" William asked, his voice smaller than his usual confident tone. The adults exchanged glances. News traveled fast on the frontier, even to children's ears. The Miller family, just 5 miles east, had abandoned their homestead after repeated threats. Tensions had been escalating for months between settlers and the various tribes who saw the endless stream of wagons as an invasion of their ancestral hunting grounds. "The Millers chose to return east," Thomas said firmly. "We are staying. This is our home now." Elizabeth gathered the children close, her voice finding strength in familiar verses from Isaiah that had comforted generations of pioneers facing uncertainty. "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God." Outside, beyond the candlelit safety of their cabin, a different gathering was taking place. 24 warriors from several bands had united under the leadership of a war chief who had lost 3 sons to a cavalry attack the previous spring. Their grievances were legitimate: broken treaties, encroachment on hunting grounds, and the steady destruction of the buffalo herds that sustained their way of life. But vengeance, once kindled, rarely distinguishes between the guilty and the innocent. Among those warriors, silent and conflicted, rode 2 stars. At 42, he was older than most of the others and carried the unusual distinction of having fought alongside white soldiers during the recent Civil War. His Cheyenne name had been Walks with Thunder, but the Union scouts had called him 2 Stars for the insignia he'd earned. After witnessing the brutality at Antietam and Gettysburg, he had returned to his people only to find greater struggles awaiting them. 2 Stars had argued against attacking the homesteaders, advocating instead for negotiation through the Indian Agency. But his voice had been overruled. His service alongside the Bluecoats viewed by many younger warriors as a compromise of his heritage. Tonight, he rode with them, not in pursuit of vengeance, but in hopes of moderating their actions. The children, at least, he had pleaded in council, the children must be spared. The war chief had stared at him coldly. Did they spare our children at Sand Creek? There was no answer to this terrible truth. 2 Stars rode in silence, the Springfield rifle he had brought back from the war strapped across his back, a weapon he had sworn would never again be fired in anger. Inside the Bennett cabin, Sarah drifted into uneasy sleep, her small body curled against her mother's side. The brutal Nebraska winter had arrived early, and even the fear of attack couldn't completely overcome the family's exhaustion after months of back-breaking work to prepare for the coming season. She dreamed of her grandmother's house in Pennsylvania, the smell of apple pies cooling on the sill, the comfort of a proper bedroom with flowered wallpaper, the normalcy of church on Sundays and school on weekdays. In her dream, she was trying to explain to grandmother why they had left, but the words wouldn't come. The sound that woke her wasn't loud, not the crack of rifles she had feared, but something subtler. A soft thud against the cabin's outer wall, followed by the unmistakable odor of smoke. Sarah sat up, instantly alert, her eyes darting to the window, where an orange glow now flickered through the gaps between the boards. "Papa!" she cried, but Thomas was already moving, grabbing the family's water bucket. "Fire arrows," he said grimly. "Elizabeth, take the children to the root cellar. Now!" William was immediately awake, reaching for his sister's hand with practiced coordination. The children had rehearsed this drill, though always with the expectation it would remain theoretical. Elizabeth grabbed the small bag she had prepared weeks ago, containing matches, jerky, a knife, and a small pistol Thomas had taught her to use. "Go!" Thomas urged, already struggling to extinguish the flames that were spreading across the cabin's wooden shingles. The last image Sarah would carry of her father was his silhouette against the flames, his schoolteacher's hands transformed by months of farming into calloused weapons against the fire threatening to consume their home. Later, she would wonder if he knew even then that the battle was already lost. Elizabeth hustled the children toward the trapdoor, leading to the small earthen cellar where they stored potatoes and carrots through the winter. As she reached for the iron ring, the cabin's front door splintered inward. "Hide," she whispered urgently, shoving Sarah toward a stack of empty burlap sacks in the corner. "William, protect your sister." Sarah felt her brother's arms encircle her, pulling her deep into the shadows behind the potato barrels. His body trembled against hers, but his grip remained firm, her protector until the end. What followed would come to Sarah later only in fragments, mercifully separated from chronology or coherence. The sounds of struggle, her mother's defiant voice, a single gunshot from the small pistol, William's breath hot against her ear as he whispered, "Don't move, Sadie. Whatever happens, don't make a sound." Then footsteps on the wooden floor above them, the trap-door wrenched open, lantern light spilling into their sanctuary. William's arms tightened around her one last time before he released her, rising to place himself between the intruders and his sister. "Run!" he shouted, lunging toward the ladder. Sarah burrowed deeper into the burlap, pulling her mother's quilt, hastily grabbed during their flight, over her body. Through a small gap, she watched shadows move across the cellar walls, heard words spoken in a language she didn't understand. And then the unimaginable. William's defiant cries silenced with brutal efficiency. A warrior descended the ladder, lantern held high, scanning the root cellar methodically. Sarah held her breath, pressing herself against the earthen wall, willing herself to disappear into the soil itself. The lantern light passed over her hiding place, lingered for an excruciating moment, then moved on. Words were exchanged above. The house was now fully engulfed in flames. Time was short. Whatever they sought, food, weapons, valuables, needed to be gathered quickly. The warrior ascended the ladder, pulled it up after him, and the trapdoor slammed shut. Sarah remained motionless, suspended in a terrible void between terror and disbelief. Above her, the cabin that had been her home for less than a year became her family's funeral pyre. The heat intensified, smoke seeping through the floorboards, but the earth-walled cellar remained a pocket of terrible sanctuary. For hours she drifted between consciousness and blessed oblivion as smoke filled the space. The quilt, damp from the cellar's moisture, became her lifeline as she breathed through its layers. Eventually the sounds of destruction above faded, replaced by the hollow whisper of wind through charred timber. Dawn broke, though Sarah couldn't see it from her earthen prison. The trapdoor, partially collapsed under burning debris, had sealed her inside. In the absolute darkness, time lost meaning. She called out for her mother, her father, her brother, her voice growing hoarser until it faded to a whisper. Hunger came and went. Thirst remained constant. She found a potato, its skin withered, but its flesh still moist enough to provide minimal sustenance. She thought of Bible stories her mother had read. Jonah in the belly of the whale, Daniel in the lion's den, and whispered prayers with cracked lips. "Please, God, send someone. Please, God, don't let me die alone in the dark." Miles away, 2 stars had separated from the war party, his spirit heavy with what he had witnessed. He had not participated in the killings, had even managed to divert warriors away from 2 of the targeted homesteads, but neither had he prevented the massacre at the 3rd. The faces of the dead would join those already haunting his dreams, more casualties in a conflict that seemed without end. He made camp alone that night, performing a purification ritual and praying for guidance. As he entered the state between wakefulness and sleep, a vision came to him, an eagle circling above charred ruins, its cry drawing his attention to something beneath the ashes. Throughout his life, the eagle had been his spirit guide, appearing at moments of significant transition. At first light, 2 stars broke camp and turned his horse back toward the destroyed homesteads, drawn by a force he couldn't fully articulate. The Bennett property was the furthest west, its remains still smoldering when he arrived. He dismounted, moving cautiously through the devastation. noting with sorrow the body of a man half buried under collapsed timbers near what had been the front door. The vision of the eagle returned, stronger now. 2 stars stood motionless, listening. Beyond the ordinary senses that had been honed through years as a scout, something remained here, a presence faint but persistent. He circled the ruins, finding the mother's body near what had been the back of the cabin and a small boy's form nearby. 3 souls violently severed from life, yet the feeling persisted. Something remained. Someone remained. The blackened floorboards had partially collapsed into a space below. A root cellar, common among settler homes. 2 stars knelt, clearing debris until he could make out the outline of a trapdoor, its edges sealed by fallen beams. Using his knife and bare hands, he worked methodically to clear the opening. When he finally wrenched it open, the stale air that escaped carried no hint of life. He lowered himself into the darkness, allowing his eyes to adjust. The small space appeared empty at first glance, just root vegetables and empty preserving jars. Then a slight movement caught his attention, a bundle of fabric in the farthest corner that didn't match the surroundings. 2 stars approached slowly, aware that cornered animals often lashed out in fear. He gently pulled back the quilt to reveal a child, a girl with matted blonde hair, her face streaked with soot and tears, blue eyes wide with terror and desperation. "Yahe Otse," he said softly in Cheyenne, "be not afraid," before switching to English. "I will not harm you, little one." Sarah shrank back, her voice a ragged whisper. "Are they gone? The Indians who killed my family?" 2 stars felt the weight of her words. To tell her that he had ridden with those warriors, even if he hadn't participated in the killings, would destroy any chance of gaining her trust. Yet he could not begin with a lie. "They are gone," he said simply. "I am not with them. I am Hestahea Cheyenne. But I fought with the Bluecoats in the Great War. My name is 2 Stars." The child's gaze fixed on something at his belt, a brass buckle from his Union uniform that he still wore, its eagle emblem tarnished but recognizable. Her expression changed subtly, from pure terror to desperate hope. "My papa said the army protects us," she whispered. "I will protect you now," 2 Stars promised, extending his hand. "But we must leave this place. Will you come?" Sarah hesitated, glancing around the cellar that had been both her prison and salvation. "My mama and papa," she said, her voice breaking. "My brother will." "They walk the spirit path now," 2 Stars said gently. "We cannot help them. But they would want you to live." She clutched the quilt tighter. "This was my mama's, made by my grandmother." "Bring it," he nodded. "It holds their spirit." With trembling limbs, Sarah finally reached for his hand. 2 Stars lifted her easily. She weighed almost nothing after days without proper food or water. As he carried her up into the daylight, her eyes squeezed shut against the sudden brightness. He felt her body go rigid at the sight of the destruction surrounding them. "Don't look," he murmured, shielding her face against his buckskin shirt. "Look only forward now." He carried her to his horse, a sturdy painted mare that stood patiently nearby. After helping her into the saddle, he wrapped her in the quilt and offered his waterskin. Sarah drank greedily, the water spilling down her chin in her desperation, to quench days of thirst. "The fort," she said between gulps. "You'll take me to Fort Kearney. They'll help me find my grandmother in Pennsylvania." 2 Stars hesitated. The complexity of his situation suddenly crystallized. To the settlers at Fort Kearney, he would be just another hostile Indian. possibly even suspected of participating in the very attack that had orphaned this child. The soldiers might shoot him on sight, especially given the fresh outrage these killings would provoke. Yet to return to his own people with a settler child would be equally dangerous. Many would see her as an unwelcome reminder of the encroachment that threatened their way of life. Some of the more hardened warriors might even view her continued existence as an affront to their campaign against the homesteaders. Looking at the exhausted child before him, Two Stars made the decision that would alter both their lives irrevocably. Neither the world of the settlers nor his tribal camp could offer immediate safety. They would have to find another path. First, "We find food and safe shelter," he said, mounting behind her. "Then we make a plan." As they rode away from the burned homestead, a bald eagle circled overhead, its distinctive cry piercing the prairie silence. Two Stars raised his face to the sky, acknowledging the sign. The child craned her neck to watch the majestic bird. "My, Papa said eagles represent freedom," she murmured, leaning back against Two Stars' chest as exhaustion overtook her. "The eagle is Wansohe's, a messenger," Two Stars replied. "He has led me to you for a purpose. Now he watches over our journey." As Sarah drifted into the first peaceful sleep she had known in days, Two Stars guided his horse northward, away from both settler communities and tribal encampments, toward the remote cabin of Jacob Redfern, a former army scout who had married a Pawnee woman and now lived in the boundary world between cultures. If anyone could help them navigate the dangerous path ahead, it would be Redfern. The journey would take 2 days if they pushed hard, but the old scout's homestead offered their best hope of temporary sanctuary, while Two Stars determined how to protect this child, whom fate, or the eagle spirit, had placed in his care. Behind them, smoke Jacob Redfern's cabin appeared over the ridge like a mirage in the fading twilight, a solid structure of hewn logs with smoke curling from its stone chimney, promising warmth and safety. Two Stars felt Sarah stir against him, roused from her fitful sleep by the change in the horse's gait as they descended toward the homestead. "Where are we?" she murmured, her voice still raspy from smoke and thirst. "Friends home," Two Stars replied simply, tightening his protective arm around her small frame. "Man who walks between worlds, like me." As they approached, a figure emerged onto the porch, a tall man with graying red hair and a beard streaked with silver. Jacob Redfern wore buckskin pants and a flannel shirt, a curious blend of settler and frontier style that mirrored his existence between cultures. His weathered hand rested casually on the rifle propped against the doorframe. "That you, Two Stars?" he called, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. "Been a while since you darkened my door." Two Stars raised his free hand in greeting. "Need help, old friend?" Redfern's eyes narrowed as he registered the small figure bundled in the quilt before Two Stars. His expression shifted from curiosity to alarm as understanding dawned. "Sweet Jesus," he muttered, setting his rifle aside and striding toward them. "Is that a child? A white child?" Two Stars dismounted carefully, keeping Sarah cradled against him. "Last survivor of the Bennett homestead." Redfern's face hardened. "I heard rumors in town yesterday. 3 homesteads attacked west of Fort Kearney. Folks at the trading post were already organizing a search party." He glanced at Sarah, who was watching him with wary eyes. "Does she have family to return to?" "Grandmother in Pennsylvania," Two Stars confirmed. "But taking her to Fort now would be death for me. They will blame all Cheyenne for this violence." Redfern ran a hand through his beard, considering the complexity of the situation. "And I'm guessing returning to your people with a settler child isn't an option either. Some would welcome her as a sign of peace. Others would see only the enemy's blood." 2 Stars looked down at Sarah, who was listening to their exchange with the preternatural alertness of a child who had survived trauma. "She needs time to heal before another journey, and I need your counsel." Before Redfern could respond, the cabin door opened wider, revealing a woman with long black hair streaked with silver, her copper skin marked with the distinctive tattoos of the Pawnee. Mourning Dove, Redfern's wife of 15 years, assessed the situation with a single glance. "Bring her inside," she said without preamble. "The child needs food, water, and clean clothes." Her English carried the melodic accent of her native tongue, but her tone held the universal authority of a woman used to being obeyed in matters of hearth and home. Sarah tensed as they approached Mourning Dove, her fingers digging into 2 Stars' buckskin shirt. He felt her fear. After what she had witnessed, the sight of another native person would naturally trigger terror. "It's all right, little one," he murmured. "Mourning Dove is a healer. She will help you become strong again." Mourning Dove's expression softened as she recognized the child's fear. She stepped back, giving Sarah space as they entered the cabin's warm interior. The single room was neat and comfortable. A large hearth dominated one wall, a table and chairs occupied the center, and beds with colorful quilts stood against the far wall. Herbs hung drying from the rafters, filling the air with earthy scents that mingled with the aroma of something savory simmering in a pot over the fire. "My husband brings home many strays," Mourning Dove said, her voice gentler now. "Wounded deer, orphaned wolf cubs, lost travelers. All find rest here." She gestured to a chair near the fire. "Sit, child. No harm will come to you in this place." 2 Stars set Sarah down on the chair, but she refused to release his hand, her eyes darting between the 3 adults with the wariness of a cornered animal. He crouched beside her, meeting her gaze directly. "I must speak with Jacob outside," he explained. "Mourning Dove will care for you. She is Pawnee, not Cheyenne. Her people have long been friends to the Bluecoats." "You won't leave?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. 2 Stars shook his head. "I will not leave without telling you. This I promise." Mourning Dove approached slowly, carrying a wooden cup of water. "First you drink, then we find clean clothes, then food. Simple steps, one after another. This is how we begin to heal." After a moment's hesitation, Sarah accepted the cup with both hands, her thirst overcoming her fear. 2 Stars nodded to Mourning Dove in gratitude, then followed Redfern outside to the porch where they could speak privately. "You've stepped in a hornet's nest this time," Redfern said bluntly once they were alone. "Saving the child was right, but it complicates everything. You know what's happening out there." 2 Stars nodded grimly. The tenuous peace between settlers and tribes was unraveling rapidly across the frontier. Every attack, every reprisal widened. The gulf between worlds. "I could not leave her to die," he said simply. "No, you couldn't," Redfern agreed. "But now what? The army's likely to shoot any Cheyenne on sight after these raids, especially this close to Fort Kearney. And you can't exactly waltz into town with a traumatized white child in tow without inviting more questions than either of us wants to answer." 2 Stars gazed out at the darkening prairie, the first stars beginning to appear in the eastern sky. I had a vision. The eagle led me back to that burned cabin. There is purpose in this child's survival. Redfern snorted softly. Your eagle visions got you into enough trouble during the war, if I recall. Charging into that Confederate artillery barrage at Gettysburg because you saw wings in the smoke. And yet I lived. 2 stars counted, when many others fell. Luck, not magic. Perhaps they are the same thing, old friend. The 2 men fell, silent, their long history settling comfortably between them. They had scouted together for the Union Army, saved each other's lives more than once, and developed the kind of bond that transcended their different origins. Redfern was one of the few white men 2 stars trusted completely. I need 3 days, 2 stars finally said. Time for the child to regain strength, time to decide the safest path forward. Redfern sighed heavily. 3 days. Then we need to either get her to Fort Kearny or find another solution. Keeping her here longer puts Mourning Dove at risk too. You know how some folks around here feel about her already. Inside the cabin, Mourning Dove had coaxed Sarah out of her filthy, smoke-damaged clothes and into a clean shirt that hung past, her knees like a dress. The woman worked with quiet efficiency, heating water in a kettle and adding herbs before gently washing the soot and grime from Sarah's face and hands. Her touch was clinical but kind, her movements deliberately slow and predictable to avoid startling the traumatized child. "You are Sarah?" she asked, as she carefully worked a comb through the girl's tangled blonde hair. Sarah nodded, wincing slightly, as the comb caught on a knot. "How did you know?" 2 stars spoke your name as he carried you in, Mourning Dove explained. "It is a good name. In my language, names carry power. They tell us who we are meant to become." "What does Sarah mean?" the girl asked, momentarily distracted from her fear. "In the Settler Bible, Sarah means princess," Mourning Dove replied, separating another tangle with patient fingers. "But names gain new meaning through living. My grandmother taught that we earn our names through our actions." Sarah considered. This, her 7-year-old mind grappling with concepts beyond her years. "The Indians who came to our cabin," she said suddenly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Why did they want to hurt us? Papa said we weren't taking anything that wasn't ours by right." Mourning Dove's hands stilled for just a moment before resuming their gentle work. How to explain centuries of conflict to a child who had just lost everything? How to balance truth with compassion? "The earth does not belong to anyone," she said carefully. "My people believe we belong to the earth, like children to a mother. Your people believe the earth can be divided and owned, like blankets or horses." She set the comb aside and moved to face Sarah directly. "When people see the world in different ways, fear grows between them. Fear becomes anger. Anger becomes violence. But we didn't do anything wrong," Sarah insisted, tears welling in her blue eyes. "No," Mourning Dove agreed softly. "You did not, just as the children at Sand Creek did nothing wrong. Innocence is the first casualty of conflict." Sarah didn't understand the reference to Sand Creek, couldn't know of the massacre 4 years earlier, where Colorado militia had slaughtered over 100 peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho, mostly women, children, and the elderly. But she understood. The sadness in Mourning Dove's voice, the sense that this violence was part of something larger and more terrible than her young mind could comprehend. "Is 2 stars a good man?" she asked abruptly. Mourning Dove considered the question with appropriate seriousness. He carries deep wounds, like many who fought in the Great War between the states. But yes, his heart walks a true path. He risked much to bring you here. He said he fought with the Bluecoats. Papa said Indians fought against America in the war. Some did, some did not. Tribes are not all one people, just as settlers are not all one people. Mourning Dove ladled stew into a wooden bowl. 2 stars. Joined the Union Scouts because he believed in freedom for all men. His decision was not popular among many Cheyenne. Sarah accepted the bowl, the rich aroma of the stew awakening her hunger. She ate slowly at first, then with increasing urgency as her body demanded nourishment after days of deprivation. Outside, the conversation between 2 Stars and Redfern had turned practical. They huddled over crude maps drawn in the dirt of the yard, discussing possible routes east that would avoid both army patrols and hostile war parties. "The Pennsylvania Railroad runs through here," Redfern said, marking a line with a stick. "If you could get the girl to Council Bluffs, she could travel east by train, but that's nearly 200 miles through contested territory." 2 Stars studied the rough map. What of the trading post at Standing Rock? Maxwell still runs supplies east regularly, does he not? "Maxwell's been drinking more than trading lately," Redfern replied with a grimace. "But his son-in-law might help." "Good man. Married to his Lakota daughter. They make the supply run to Omaha twice a month." Their planning was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders moving at speed along the trail that led to Redfern's isolated homestead. Both men tensed, reaching instinctively for weapons. "You expecting company?" 2 Stars asked quietly. Redfern shook his head, his expression grim. "No one comes this way by accident, especially after dark." 2 Stars melted into the shadows beside the cabin as Redfern stepped forward, rifle in hand, but held casually against his side. Within minutes, 3 riders appeared in the clearing. 2 men in cavalry uniforms flanking a civilian in a worn, "Just a coat. Evening, Redfern," called the civilian, an older man with a silver star pinned to his vest. "Sorry to disturb you and the missus at this hour." "Marshal Wilson," Redfern acknowledged with a nod. "What brings you out this way?" The marshal dismounted stiffly, his movements betraying his age despite his still powerful build. "Ugly business. West of the fort. 3 homesteads hit 2 nights ago. Men, women, children, all killed, cabins burned." "I heard rumors at the trading post," Redfern replied carefully. "Terrible thing. We're organizing search parties, checking all the outlying homesteads to warn folks." Wilson's keen eyes scanned the property. "Thought you might want to ride with us tomorrow, what with your tracking skills and all. We're particularly looking for the Bennett girl." 2 Stars, concealed in the darkness, felt his breath catch. These men were already specifically searching for Sarah. "Bennett girl?" Redfern echoed, his face revealing nothing. The marshal nodded, grimly. "Thomas Bennett's youngest, 7 years old. Body wasn't found with the others. Some hope she might have escaped into the woods. More likely taken captive, poor little thing." "What makes you think she's still alive?" Redfern asked. "Grandmother back east is offering a $100 reward for information leading to her recovery, dead or alive." The marshal sighed heavily. Though alive would surely be a mercy at this point. These raids are getting bolder, closer to the fort. Armies under pressure to respond with force. Inside the cabin, Mourning Dove had heard the arrival of the riders. With swift, silent movements, she gathered Sarah up and carried her to a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug in the corner. the entrance to a small root cellar, not unlike the one that had saved the child's life days earlier. "Soldiers," she whispered, easing Sarah down into the space. "You must be silent until I come for you. Understand?" Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with renewed fear. The similarity to her recent traumatic hiding was not lost on the child, but she showed remarkable composure, clutching her mother's quilt to her chest as Mourning Dove closed the trap door and replaced the rug. Outside, the marshal was explaining the planned response to the raids. Colonel Bergman's mobilizing 2 companies to sweep the area from the Republican River north. Any braves found off the reservation will be considered hostile. Folks are saying it's time for another Chivington-style response. 2 Stars recognized the reference to the officer who had led the Sand Creek Massacre, his blood running cold at the implication. This situation was deteriorating rapidly toward wholesale slaughter. "That kind of talk leads nowhere good, Marshal," Redfern replied, his voice hardening. "I remember what happened at Sand Creek. Women and children butchered, scalped, civilians wearing military uniforms so they could claim glory without accountability." The night passed with agonizing slowness. 2 Stars remained hidden in the shadows beyond the cabin, while Redfern managed to send the marshal and his men on their way with promises to join the search party the following day. Inside, Mourning Dove kept vigil beside the trapdoor, where Sarah huddled, occasionally whispering reassurances when she heard the child's frightened whimpers. Dawn brought a hushed council around Redfern's table, the adults speaking in low tones. While Sarah slept, exhaustion having finally claimed her after the terrors of the night. "The situation has worsened faster than I feared," 2 Stars said, his weathered face grave in the early morning light. $100 reward will draw every desperate man in the territory into the search." Redfern nodded grimly. "And with the army mobilizing for a sweep of the area, you'll be hard-pressed to move in any direction without being spotted." "The North Path remains our best hope," 2 Stars insisted. "My people's winter camps in the Black Hills would offer sanctuary until spring, assuming you reach them," Redfern countered. "That's hostile country for a lone rider with a white child, especially now." Mourning Dove, who had been silent until now, placed a small bundle wrapped in deerskin on the table. "I have prepared medicines for your journey, herbs for fever, poultices for wounds, teas for strength." Her dark eyes held 2 Stars' gaze steadily. "The child trusts you now. This trust is sacred, like water in the desert. Do not waste it." 2 Stars touched the bundle with reverent fingers. "I will protect her with my life." "It may come to that," Redfern said bluntly. "The question is whether you're willing to risk hers as well." Before 2 Stars could respond, a small voice interrupted from the corner of the room. "Are you sending me away?" The adults turned to find Sarah standing beside her pallet, her mother's quilt wrapped around her shoulders like a shawl. Her blonde hair, cleaned and combed by Mourning Dove the previous evening, caught the early sunlight streaming through the cabin's single window. In the golden light, she looked almost ethereal, a child suspended between worlds. "Not away," 2 Stars assured her, crossing to kneel before her so their eyes were level. "But we cannot stay here. It isn't safe." "Because of the soldiers?" Sarah asked, her young mind piecing together fragments of the adult conversations she had overheard. 2 Stars nodded. "And others who search for you." "To take me to grandmother?" A complicated question. The adults exchanged glances, silently debating how much truth this child could bear. Finally, Mourning Dove approached, her movements deliberately gentle as she guided Sarah to the table and placed a wooden cup of warm tea in her small hands. "Some search to help you," she explained. "Others search for the reward money your grandmother offers. These men—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "These men might not care if Two Stars is hurt in the process of finding you." Sarah's blue eyes widened in understanding beyond her years. "Because he's Cheyenne? Like the ones who—" She couldn't finish the sentence, the memories still too raw. "Yes," Two Stars said simply. "To many settlers, all Cheyenne are the same. They will not believe I saved you." "But you did," Sarah insisted with the fierce certainty of childhood. "You found me when no one else did. You carried me here." Two Stars felt something tighten in his chest, an unfamiliar sensation of warmth. In the heart long hardened by war and loss. "Yes, little one, and I will carry you to safety again if you will trust me." "Where?" Sarah's question was direct, her gaze unwavering. "North," Two Stars replied honestly, "to my mother's people. They will shelter us until the search grows cold. Then we will find a path to your grandmother." Sarah considered this, her face solemn. "Will it be dangerous?" "Yes," Two Stars answered, refusing to insult her with comforting lies. "But staying here brings danger to Mourning Dove and Jacob, and going to the fort brings danger to me." The child's gaze moved from Two Stars to the red ferns and back again, her young mind weighing complexities that would overwhelm most adults. Finally, she nodded, a decision visibly forming behind her eyes. "I'll go with you," she said, her small voice steady. "But I want to keep Mama's quilt." And she hesitated, a flash of childish vulnerability breaking through her composure. "I'm afraid of being alone in the dark again." Two Stars placed his hand gently on her shoulder, feeling the fragile bones beneath his weathered palm. "I will not leave you alone in the dark. This I swear by the eagle spirit that guided me to you." Preparations began immediately. Redfern gathered supplies, dried meat, cornmeal, coffee, ammunition for Two Stars' rifle. Mourning Dove worked with quiet efficiency, altering a set of child's clothing that had belonged to her niece to fit Sarah's smaller frame. The buckskin leggings, wool shirt, and small moccasins would offer better protection against the elements than the settler child's tattered dress. "You must blend with the shadows," Mourning Dove explained as she helped Sarah into the unfamiliar garments. "These clothes will help you move silently, stay warm, become part of the land rather than standing apart from it." Sarah examined her, reflection in the small looking glass hanging on the cabin wall, her expression a mixture of curiosity and uncertainty as she took in her transformed appearance. With her fair hair tucked beneath a small fur cap, dressed in native clothing, she looked like a creature of neither world, a visual representation of the liminal space she now inhabited. "My papa said dressing like an Indian was wrong," she murmured, more question than statement. Mourning Dove's hands stilled in their work. "Your papa spoke from his understanding of the world. But sometimes survival requires us to move between worlds. Two Stars walks this path, neither fully of his people nor of yours, but carrying wisdom from both." Outside, Redfern and Two Stars were preparing the horses, a sturdy paint mare for Two Stars, and a gentle dun gelding to carry their supplies. The plan was simple, but fraught with risk. Travel by night, hide by day, avoid all settlements and known trails. Their destination, the winter camps near the Black Hills, lay nearly 200 miles north. A journey of at least 10 days if all went well. "You should take my Navy Colt," Redfern said, offering a revolver. "That Springfield rifle makes a distinctive sound. Every scout in the army will recognize it." 2 Stars accepted the weapon with a nod of gratitude. The revolver was a solid weight. In his hand, a reminder of the violence that seemed to follow him, despite his best efforts to embrace peace after the war. "I had hoped never to fire a gun in anger again," he admitted quietly. Redfern's weathered face softened with understanding. "I know, brother, but these are hard times, and you carry precious cargo now." By midday, their preparations were complete. 2 Stars had changed into clothing that would distinguish him less clearly as Cheyenne, a mixture of native and settler garments that might, at a distance, allow him to pass for a half-breed scout or trapper. His distinctive hair, normally worn in traditional braids, was cut shorter and covered by a wide-brimmed hat. "If questioned," Redfern advised, "say you're taking your half-blood daughter to relatives in Dakota Territory. Most won't look too closely if your story seems plausible." Sarah watched the transformation with solemn eyes, somehow understanding that 2 Stars was sacrificing more than hair for her safety. His identity, his connection to his people, his very self, all temporarily set aside to protect her. As the sun began its westward descent, the time for departure drew near. They would travel through the coming night, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and Fort Kearney before the search parties mobilized at dawn. Morning Dove prepared a final meal, rabbit stew rich with wild onions and prairie turnips, and they ate in contemplative silence, each lost in thoughts of the journey ahead. After the meal, Morning Dove took Sarah aside for a final preparation. From a small pouch at her waist, she withdrew a mixture of earth and charcoal. "For your face," she explained, demonstrating by applying streaks to her own cheeks. "The moon is bright tonight. Your skin would shine like a beacon." Sarah hesitated only briefly before closing her eyes and allowing Morning Dove to darken her fair complexion with the mixture. The Pawnee woman worked with practiced hands, using subtle strokes to dull the child's pale skin without completely disguising her features. "There," Morning Dove said finally, showing Sarah her reflection in a polished metal plate. "Now you are truly between worlds, neither fully of one nor the other." Sarah studied her transformed face with serious consideration. "Will it wash off when we reach your people?" she asked 2 Stars. His lip quirked in the ghost of a smile. "Yes, little one. This is for the journey, not forever." As dusk gathered around the cabin, the mood grew somber. Final preparations were made in near silence. Water skins filled, provisions checked one last time, weapons secured for easy access but out of sight. Sarah's mother's quilt was carefully rolled and strapped behind 2 Stars' saddle, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from the elements. The moment of departure arrived with the first stars appearing in the eastern sky. 2 Stars lifted Sarah onto the paint mare, then mounted behind her, his arm securely around her small frame. The child was rigid with tension, but made no sound of protest. Redfern clasped forearms with 2 Stars in the warrior's farewell. "May the God of my fathers and the spirits of yours watch over your journey." Morning Dove approached with a small leather pouch on a cord, which she slipped over Sarah's head. "Eagle medicine," she explained, "for protection and clear sight on the path ahead." The child touched the pouch reverently, then, in a spontaneous gesture that surprised them all, leaned down to embrace Morning Dove briefly before settling back against 2 Stars' chest. "Remember," Redfern said as they prepared to ride out, "the hunting cabin at Split Rock. If you're pursued or need shelter, Nathaniel still checks it every few weeks for me. There are supplies hidden beneath the north corner stone. 2 Stars nodded, committing the information to memory. What will you tell the marshal tomorrow? That I'm tracking sign to the west, Redfern replied with a grim smile. I'll leave enough false trail to keep them occupied for days. With final nods of farewell, 2 Stars guided the paint mare out of the clearing, the supply horse following obediently on a lead rope. The first part of their route would take them through dense woodland that bordered Redfern's property. Difficult terrain for horses, but it would leave minimal sign for trackers to follow. As they disappeared into the gathering darkness, Mourning Dove clutched her husband's arm. The path before them is shadowed, she murmured. I see many crossroads, many dangers. Redfern covered her hand with his own. 2 Stars has survived worse odds. It is not him I fear for, she replied softly. The child carries a burden heavier than any her age should bear. If her spirit breaks under its weight. She left the thought unfinished, but Redfern understood. They had both seen it before. Survivors of massacres, witnesses to atrocities, who lived on in body, but whose souls never truly recovered from what they had experienced. 2 Stars understands trauma, he reminded her. He's walked that path. Himself, Mourning Dove nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why the eagle led him to her. Wounded spirits recognize each other. As they stood watching the empty trail where the riders had vanished, a bald eagle soared overhead, its cry piercing the twilight silence. Both Redfern and Mourning Dove raised their faces to track its flight. North, toward the distant black hills, its wings gilded by the last rays of the setting sun. A sign or mere coincidence? Neither spoke the question aloud, but both felt its weight as they turned back toward their cabin, already preparing their own deceptions for the search. Party's arrival the following dawn. For 3 nights they traveled, keeping to the shadows, avoiding open ground whenever possible. 2 Stars guided them with the instincts of a veteran scout, his senses perpetually alert for signs of pursuit or danger. Sarah proved a remarkably resilient companion, enduring the discomfort of long hours in the saddle without complaint, sleeping when opportunity allowed, and maintaining the quiet vigilance 2 Stars requested of her. On the 4th day, they made camp in a sheltered ravine beside a small stream. The horses grazed contentedly on the sparse winter grass, while 2 Stars constructed their usual lean-to against the steep embankment. Sarah, growing more confident in her role, gathered kindling for the small fire that would heat their morning coffee and journey bread. We've made good progress, 2 Stars told her as they shared their simple meal. Perhaps 50 miles from Redfern's cabin. Another week's travel will bring us near the winter camps. Sarah nodded, her face serious beyond her years. The earth and charcoal mixture that darkened her fair skin had become a daily ritual between them, applied at dusk before their nightly travel, washed away in the cold stream waters at dawn. 2 Stars had come to recognize the subtle shift in her demeanor that accompanied the transformation, as if the disguise allowed her to temporarily set aside her grief and fear. "Will your people welcome me?" she asked, her blue eyes fixed on his face with that direct gaze that continually surprised him with its perception. 2 Stars considered his answer carefully. The child deserved truth, not false comfort. Some will, some will not. My mother's sister, Singing Bird, has a kind, a heart. Her husband, Black Kettle, is a peace chief who has long advocated for understanding between our peoples. A peace chief? Sarah echoed, curiosity evident in her voice. Among my people, leadership is divided. War chiefs lead in battle. Peace chiefs guide in times of harmony. Both are needed for the tribe to prosper. He added another small branch. To their fire, Black Kettle has signed many treaties with the Bluecoats, always believing the next paper will bring lasting peace. But it doesn't. Sarah's question held no judgment, only a child's desire to understand. Two Stars shook his head. Paper promises are like tracks in sand. The first strong wind erases them. As they finished their meal, Two Stars sensed a subtle change in the forest around them, a hushing of birdsong, the stillness that often precedes human intrusion. He motioned for Sarah to remain silent, his hand instinctively moving to the Navy Colt revolver at his belt. For long minutes they sat motionless, Two Stars' eyes scanning their surroundings while his ears strained for any sound that might identify the approaching threat. Sarah, having quickly learned to trust his instincts, remained frozen beside him, her small body tense with apprehension. The snap of a twig, barely audible but distinctive, came from the northwest edge of the ravine. Two Stars' gaze followed the sound to a thicket of scrub pine approximately 50 yards distant. Nothing moved visibly, but his experienced eye detected a shadow that did not match the natural patterns of the woodland. "Stay here," he whispered to Sarah, sliding the revolver from his belt. "If I call to you, run to the horses. You remember how to mount alone?" She nodded, her eyes wide but resolute. Two Stars had taught her emergency mounting techniques during their journey, preparing for precisely this scenario. The paint mare was trained to kneel on command, allowing the small child to climb onto its back without assistance. With silent movements born from years of scouting, Two Stars edged away from their camp, using the ravine's contours for cover as he circled toward the potential threat. The subtle signs of human presence became more pronounced as he approached. The unnatural stillness, the faint scent of tobacco, and unwashed bodies carried on the light breeze. Hunters, not military scouts, whose discipline would have produced a different pattern of movement. Not Cheyenne or Lakota warriors who would never have broken a twig to announce their presence. These were civilian trackers, likely drawn by the reward for Sarah's recovery. Two Stars paused behind the broad trunk of a cottonwood, gauging distances and options. A confrontation would be disastrous. Gunfire would attract attention for miles around, potentially drawing larger search parties to investigate. Yet simple flight might prove equally dangerous if their pursuers had horses nearby. The decision was made for him when a guttural voice spoke from the thicket, the whispered words carrying clearly in the still forest air. "I'm telling you, Dixon, I saw smoke. Someone's camped down in that ravine." A second voice responded, more cautious. "Could be anyone. Trappers, maybe. We're looking for an Indian with a white girl. $50 says it's them. The scout at, the fort said the Cheyenne bastard was heading north." Two Stars weighed his options rapidly. 2 men, at minimum, possibly more waiting with horses. Confrontation inevitable if they continued forward to investigate the camp. His gaze tracked potential escape routes, calculating distances to adequate cover. The likelihood of outrunning mounted pursuers with Sarah riding double. The odds were poor, but flight remained preferable to a firefight with the child so close. He had begun retreating silently toward the camp when a third voice joined the hunters, this one pitched higher with excitement. "Hoofprints here! 2 horses, one heavier than t'other." headed down into the ravine not more than an hour ago. Time had run out. Discovery was imminent. 2 Stars moved with decisive speed back toward their small camp, his mind rapidly formulating a new plan. If they could reach the horses quickly enough, gain enough of a head start. He found Sarah exactly where he had left her, though her small face betrayed the terror she was struggling to contain. "Men coming," he whispered urgently, gathering their few supplies with swift efficiency. "We must move. Now." The child needed no further explanation. She helped him scatter the fire, using dirt to extinguish the flames as he had taught her. Within moments, they were moving toward the horses, staying low and using the ravine's contours for concealment. They had nearly reached the animals when the first shout echoed behind them. "There! By the horses!" 2 Stars lifted Sarah onto the paint mare's back in one fluid motion, then slapped the horse's flank sharply. "Ride!" he commanded. "Follow the stream north. I will find you." "No!" Sarah cried, reaching for him with desperate hands. "You promised not to leave me alone." The anguish in her voice tore at him, but there was no time for explanation or comfort. "I keep my promise," he assured her fiercely. "But first, I must lead them away from your path. Go now." The paint mare, responding to his commanding tone, surged forward with Sarah clinging to its mane. 2 Stars turned back to face the approaching hunters, drawing the navy colt, but keeping it concealed against his thigh. The supply horse remained tethered nearby, part of the desperate plan forming. In his mind, 3 men crested the ridge above the ravine, rifles raised. Their appearance confirmed 2 Stars' assessment. Bounty hunters rather than military, their mismatched clothing and unkempt beards marking them as the kind of frontier opportunists who would track human prey with the same detachment they brought to hunting game. "That's him!" the tallest of the 3 shouted. "The Cheyenne from the fort description. Where's the girl?" 2 Stars raised his empty hand slowly, projecting a deliberate calm he did not feel. "What girl?" he called back. "I am alone, traveling north to my people's winter camp." The hunters exchanged skeptical glances. The shortest of the 3, a wiry man with a pockmarked face, gestured with his rifle toward the supply horse. "Carrying a lot for one man. And we've been tracking 2 riders." "My companion left yesterday," 2 Stars lied smoothly. "A half-blood, trapper heading for the Yellowstone." The 3rd hunter, whose right eye was clouded by a cataract, spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the ground. "He's lying, Dixon. The reward notice said he'd try to pass himself off as one of them Union scouts." Dixon, evidently the leader, took a step forward, his rifle trained steadily on 2 Stars' chest. "We know you got the Bennett girl, Indian. Hand her over peaceful-like, and maybe we won't have to ventilate you before taking you back to fort." "Yearney." 2 Stars allowed his shoulders to slump, a calculated display of defeat. "The child is gone," he said, injecting resignation into his voice. "Took fever 3 days ago. I buried her beneath that ridge." He pointed west, away from Sarah's actual path of flight. The men's expressions darkened. "Dead, huh?" Dixon's voice carried dangerous skepticism. "That's mighty convenient. No reward without a body, dead or alive." "I will show you the grave," 2 Stars offered, taking a careful step toward the supply horse, maintaining the appearance of cooperation while calculating the precise moment to act. The hunters conferred briefly, their voices low, but their meaning clear from their gestures. They remained doubtful, but were considering investigating his claim. 2 Stars used their momentary distraction to close the final distance to the supply horse, his hand casually dropping to adjust a dangling saddlebag. "Stand still, Indian," Dixon barked, noticing the movement. "Jenkins, check his belt for weapons." The pockmarked hunter approached cautiously, rifle still trained on Two Stars' midsection. As he drew within arm's reach, Two Stars made his move. In one fluid motion, he pivoted behind the supply horse, using the animal as a shield while drawing the Navy Colt. The first shot caught Jenkins in the shoulder, spinning him backward with a howl of pain. The second shot went wide as Dixon and the one-eyed hunter returned fire, their bullets thudding into the unfortunate horse, which screamed and reared in panic. Two Stars used the chaos to break into a sprint, heading west, deliberately opposite from Sarah's direction of flight. His strategy was desperate but clear: become the most visible target, draw all pursuit away from the child, create enough distance to eventually circle back and find her. Behind him, Dixon's voice rose above the confusion. "He's running!" After him, more rifle fire cracked through the forest, bullets splintering bark from trees near Two Stars' head as he ran. He fired twice more over his shoulder, not aiming to hit, but to force his pursuers to take cover, buying precious seconds for his escape. The forest thickened ahead, offering better concealment if he could reach it. Two Stars pushed himself harder, ignoring the burning in his lungs, focusing solely on putting distance between himself and the hunters, and by extension, between them and Sarah. A sudden, searing pain tore through his left side, the impact nearly driving him to his knees. A bullet had found its mark, creasing his ribs in a bloody furrow. Two Stars stumbled, but forced himself onward, using the trees for partial cover as he continued his flight westward. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter as the hunters paused to reload their single-shot rifles. The temporary reprieve allowed him to assess his wound, painful but not immediately life-threatening, the bullet having carved a shallow path across his ribs rather than penetrating his chest. For nearly an hour, the deadly game continued. Two Stars employed every evasion tactic he had learned during the war, doubling back, crossing streams to mask his trail, laying false sign to confuse his hunters. Twice more they caught glimpses of him, and twice more rifle fire split the forest quiet. One bullet grazed his arm, the other missed entirely. As dusk began to gather, Two Stars finally allowed himself to believe his strategy might have succeeded. The pursuing voices had grown distant, their sporadic calls to each other suggesting they had spread out, losing confidence in their ability to track him in the fading light. Now came the most dangerous part of his plan. He needed to circle around, avoid recapture, and somehow locate Sarah along the stream where he had sent her. All while bleeding from 2 wounds and with night approaching. Two Stars paused to bind his injuries with strips torn from his shirt, using techniques learned from Cheyenne medicine women and Union Army surgeons alike. The wound at his side continued to seep blood, but the arm graze had already begun to clot. Neither would kill him if he could avoid infection, but the blood loss and pain would slow him considerably. As he worked, his thoughts turned to Sarah. Had she continued north as instructed? Would she have the courage to make camp alone, to tend the horses, to wait for his return? Or would terror drive her to keep moving until exhaustion claimed her? She was only 7, a child who had already endured more trauma than most adults faced in a lifetime. Yet in their days together, Two Stars had glimpsed a resilience in her that transcended her years. The same quiet strength that had kept her alive in the root cellar might well sustain her now. He had to believe this. The alternative was unthinkable. With his wounds bandaged as best he could manage, 2 Stars began the careful process of circling back toward the stream. He moved with deliberate caution, alert for signs that the hunters might have anticipated. This strategy, the fading light, worked both for and against him, offering concealment but making navigation more challenging. Night had fully claimed the forest by the time he reached the stream where he had sent Sarah. 2 Stars followed its course northward, scanning the banks for any sign of the child or the paint mare. The quarter moon provided just enough illumination to distinguish basic shapes, but details were lost in shadow. After an hour of careful searching, he found the first evidence of her passage. Hoofprints in a muddy section of bank where the mare had apparently stopped to drink. The tracks continued northward, following the watercourse as he had instructed. 2 Stars felt a surge of pride mingled with concern. She had followed his directions precisely, but the tracks were several hours old. How far had she ridden? Would she have had the wisdom to stop before complete darkness made travel dangerous? The answer came 3 miles farther upstream, where the terrain opened into a small meadow surrounded by dense pine forest. There, partially concealed in a thicket near the water's edge, stood the paint mare. The horse raised its head at 2 Stars' approach, nickering softly in recognition. "Sarah?" 2 Stars called quietly, approaching the thicket with careful steps. "It is." Dawn arrived with a thin veil of frost covering the meadow grass. 2 Stars woke before first light, his wounds stiff and painful, but no longer bleeding freely. Beside him, Sarah slept curled tightly in her mother's quilt, her small face peaceful despite the dangers that surrounded them. He allowed her a few more precious minutes of rest while he checked the horses and surveyed their surroundings. The paint mare seemed recovered from yesterday's hard run, but 2 Stars felt the absence of their supply horse keenly. With it had gone half their provisions, most of their cooking implements, and the extra ammunition for Redfern's revolver. The 6 shots remaining in the cylinder would have to suffice until they reached the winter camps, or until circumstances forced his hand. The stream where they had taken shelter continued northward, its winding course providing a natural path through increasingly rugged terrain. Ahead lay the foothills that would eventually rise into the Black Hills, sacred ground to the Lakota, and increasingly contested territory as gold rumors drew prospectors despite treaty prohibitions. 2 Stars studied the sky with practiced eyes, reading the gathering clouds with concern. The temperature had dropped overnight, and the changing wind carried the unmistakable scent of approaching snow. A storm would cover their tracks, but it would also slow their progress and amplify the dangers of exposure, especially for a child. "Is it going to snow?" 2 Stars turned to find Sarah awake, watching him from their shelter. Her perceptiveness continued to surprise him. This ability to read situations and moods that seemed beyond her years. "Yes," he confirmed. "Perhaps by nightfall. We must cover as much ground as possible before then." Sarah nodded solemnly, folding her quilt with careful precision. In just a few days of travel, she had absorbed his teachings about efficiency and preparation, understanding that survival depended on attention to small details. "Your wounds?" she asked, eyeing the blood-stained bandages visible beneath his torn shirt. "They will heal," 2 Stars replied, downplaying the persistent ache in his side. "But we must change the dressings before we ride." Working together in the gray dawn light, They used the last of Mourning Dove's medicinal herbs and clean strips torn from Two Star's spare shirt to rebind his injuries. Sarah's small hands moved with surprising gentleness and precision, her face a mask of concentration, as she applied the poultices exactly as he directed. "Papa showed me how to bandage cuts," she explained as she worked. "He said on the frontier everyone must know some doctoring." Two Stars studied her as she tended his wounds, struck again by the peculiar mix of childish innocence and premature wisdom in her manner. The trauma she had endured would have broken many adults, yet here she was, focused on the practical tasks of survival, finding purpose in being useful. "Your father taught you well," he said simply when she had finished. They broke camp quickly, leaving minimal evidence of their overnight stay. The lean-to was dismantled, the small fire pit scattered and covered with fresh earth. Two Stars helped Sarah apply the earth and charcoal mixture to her face once more, then checked her moccasins and leggings to ensure they would provide adequate protection against the coming cold. "Today we must push hard," he explained as he lifted her onto the paint mare's back. "The hunters may still be searching, and the storm will make travel dangerous." Sarah nodded, clutching the horse's mane as Two Stars mounted behind her. "How far to your people's camp?" "Perhaps 4 more days if we maintain good pace," he replied, guiding the mare back toward the stream. "Less if we find horses from my mother's band grazing in the winter valleys." They rode in silence for the first hour, following the stream's northern course as the terrain gradually became more broken and elevated. The sparse stands of pine and cottonwood gave way to denser forest, providing better cover but making navigation more challenging. By midday, the temperature had dropped further, and the clouds hung low and heavy over the hills ahead. Two Stars pushed them harder than he would have preferred, stopping only briefly to rest the horse and share some of their dwindling food supplies. During one such break, as Sarah chewed on a strip of dried buffalo meat, she asked the question that had clearly been forming in her mind throughout the morning's ride. "If the hunters find us again, will you have to shoot more of them?" The directness of her inquiry caught Two Stars unprepared. He considered his answer carefully, respecting her enough to offer truth rather than comfort. "I hope not," he said finally. "Taking life is a serious thing, even when necessary for protection. My people believe that each killing leaves a mark on the spirit that must be cleansed through ceremony." Sarah processed this, her blue eyes thoughtful. "But you killed people in the war. Papa said soldiers had to." "Yes," Two Stars acknowledged, the memories of Antietam and Gettysburg briefly darkening his expression. "Many men fell to my rifle during those years. Each death remains with me." "Is that why you helped me?" she asked suddenly. "To cleanse your spirit?" The question was startling in its insight. Two Stars studied the child's face, recognizing that her trauma had opened channels of perception typically closed to one so young. "Perhaps in part," he admitted, "but more simply, no child should suffer for the conflicts of adults. When I found you in that cellar, I saw only a life to be preserved, not an enemy to be feared." Sarah seemed satisfied with this answer. She carefully brushed crumbs from her borrowed buckskins and stood ready to continue their journey. As they remounted and pressed northward, the first snowflakes began to fall, tentative dances swirling in the strengthening wind before melting on contact with the ground. Two Stars gauged their position and the deteriorating weather, calculating distances to potential shelters he knew from previous hunts in this territory. The tall pine ridge lay perhaps 10 miles ahead, offering several caves and rock formations that could provide refuge from the storm. If they maintained their current pace, they might reach it before the snow accumulated enough to seriously impede their progress. Two Stars was so focused on this mental calculation that he nearly missed the sign, a subtle disturbance in the forest ahead, a movement that did not match the patterns of wind through branches or small game seeking shelter from the approaching storm. He reined the mare to a halt, his senses immediately alert to potential danger. Years of scouting had honed his awareness of minute details that others might overlook. Broken twigs at unnatural heights, vegetation disturbed in patterns inconsistent with animal passage, the absence of bird calls in areas that should be active. "What is it?" Sarah whispered, sensing his tension. "Not certain," Two Stars murmured, scanning their surroundings with narrowed eyes. "But we are not alone in these woods." He guided the mare off their planned route, moving deeper into the forest, where the pine canopy offered better concealment. From above, the snow was falling more heavily now, reducing visibility, but also muffling the sounds of their passage. For nearly an hour, they traveled in this cautious manner, stopping frequently for Two Stars to listen and observe. The sense of being watched never left him, though he caught no clear glimpse of their potential observer. The snow began to accumulate, first as a delicate dusting that transformed the forest into a crystalline wonderland, then as a thickening blanket that slowed their progress and made tracking increasingly difficult. Sarah huddled against Two Stars, shivering despite the shared warmth of their bodies and the protection of her mother's quilt wrapped around them both. "We need shelter soon," Two Stars acknowledged, feeling the child tremble against him. "There is a place ahead, a cliff face with an overhang that will shield us from the worst of the storm." They pushed onward through the intensifying snowfall, the mare picking her way carefully along slopes that grew increasingly treacherous. The temperature continued to drop as afternoon waned, transforming their breath into ghostly plumes that hung briefly in the still air before dissipating. The overhang appeared suddenly through the curtain of snow, a dark slash against the white-shrouded cliff face. Two Stars guided the exhausted horse toward this natural shelter, dismounting stiffly and lifting Sarah down before leading the mare into the relative protection of the rock formation. The space beneath the overhang was larger than it had appeared. From a distance, extending nearly 20 feet into the cliffside and providing ample room for both humans and horse. Previous visitors had left evidence of their stays, a circle of fire-blackened stones, stacked firewood along the rear wall, even a crude stone bench positioned to capture heat from any fire. "Hunters use this place," Two Stars explained as he helped Sarah arrange their meager belongings. "There is an unwritten code of the wilderness. Shelter and firewood are left for those who come after." Despite his wounds and exhaustion, Two Stars worked efficiently to establish their temporary camp. He gathered snow in their single remaining pot to melt for drinking water, arranged a small fire within the stone circle, and created a bed of pine boughs for Sarah near the rear wall, where the temperature would remain most stable. The child assisted as best she could, her movements increasingly sluggish as the warmth of the fire began to thaw her chilled limbs. By the time they had prepared a simple meal of journey bread and the last of their dried meat, Sarah was struggling to keep her eyes open. "Sleep now," Two Stars encouraged, tucking her mother's quilt around her small form. "The storm will keep us here tomorrow as well. We must rest while we can." Sarah nodded drowsily, but caught his hand as he turned toward the front of their shelter. "Will you tell me a story? Mama always told stories when it snowed." The request pierced Two Stars with unexpected poignancy. How long had it been since anyone had asked him for a story? Not since the war, when younger scouts had sometimes requested tales around evening fires to distract themselves from the horrors of the day's fighting. "What kind of story would you like?" he asked, settling himself beside her makeshift bed. "About eagles," Sarah murmured, her voice already thick with approaching sleep. "Since the eagle led you to me?" Two Stars watched the firelight play across her small face, casting shadows that emphasized how thin she had become during their journey. Despite his efforts to share their limited rations equally, the child was losing weight. A dangerous development as winter tightened its grip on the land. Long ago, he began adopting the traditional cadence of Cheyenne storytelling. "Before the horse came to our people, a great chief had two sons. The elder son was bold and fierce in battle, quick to lead war parties against enemy tribes. The younger son was quiet and thoughtful, preferring to observe the ways of animals and interpret signs in the clouds." Sarah's eyelids fluttered, fighting the pull of exhaustion to follow his words. Their father loved both sons, but favored the elder for his warrior spirit. "How will our people survive?" he asked the younger son. "If we do not fight to defend our hunting grounds?" The younger son replied, "There are many paths to protection. Some require the arrow, others the open hand." The father did not understand this wisdom and continued to place his hopes in his warrior son. When enemies attacked their village, the elder son led the counterattack, driving the raiders away, but sustaining a mortal wound in the process. As the elder son lay dying, the younger son climbed the highest peak in their territory to seek guidance from the spirits. For 3 days and nights he fasted and prayed, asking how he could protect his people now that his warrior brother was gone. On the dawn of the 4th day, a great eagle circled above him, then descended to perch on a nearby rock. The eagle spoke in the language of spirits. "You seek strength, but strength alone is not enough. The true protector sees beyond the horizon, anticipates danger before it arrives, and knows when to fight." The storm raged for 2 days, transforming the landscape into an endless sea of white, broken only by the dark silhouettes of pines bending beneath the weight of accumulated snow. Inside their rocky shelter, Two Stars, Sarah, and their unexpected companion, Swift Elk, maintained a fragile harmony, bound together by the common enemy of winter's fury. Sarah had initially regarded the Lakota hunter with wary suspicion, shrinking back against Two Stars when she first woke to find a stranger sharing their fire. But Swift Elk's gentle manner and obvious respect for Two Stars gradually eased her fears. By the 2nd day, she was listening with rapt attention to his stories of buffalo hunts and watching with fascination as he carved a small wooden horse from a pine branch with his hunting knife. "For you," he said simply, offering the finished carving on the morning of the 3rd day, when the storm finally began to abate. "A pony to carry your spirit until we find you a real one." Sarah accepted the gift with solemn grace, her small fingers tracing the detailed mane and alert ears Swift Elk had somehow coaxed from the simple wood. "Thank you," she whispered, the words carrying genuine warmth despite her lingering shyness. Sarah considered the question with surprising thoroughness, her gaze moving between the two men before she finally nodded. "His eyes are like yours," she said simply. Sad, but true. The assessment, delivered with a child's directness, but an old soul's perception, settled something in Two Star's mind. He had been guided by the eagle vision to Sarah. Perhaps this encounter with Swift Elk represented another intervention of the spirits in their journey. "We will go to the cabin," he decided, "but we leave at first light tomorrow. Your wounds must heal fully before we attempt the final journey." Swift Elk nodded his agreement, a hint of approval in his dark eyes. A wise choice. The snows have come early this year, a sign the winter will be harsh. Better to regain strength before facing its full fury. The remainder of the day passed in preparations for departure. Swift Elk fashioned snowshoes from flexible pine branches and rawhide, strips from his pack, creating a smaller pair for Sarah with patient precision. Two Stars tended the paint mare, rubbing her down with handfuls of dry grass to improve circulation and preparing a portion of their precious grain ration to strengthen her for the journey ahead. Sarah, meanwhile, practiced walking with the snowshoes, under Swift Elk's guidance, quickly mastering the altered gait required for efficient movement across the deep snow. Her adaptability continued to impress Two Stars, who watched from the shelter entrance as she laughed for the first time since he had found her. A bright, clear sound that pierced the winter silence when she successfully navigated a small drift without falling. That night, as they shared the last of Swift Elk's smoked venison around their fire, Sarah fell asleep against Two Stars' shoulder, exhausted from her snowshoe practice. He carefully adjusted her mother's quilt around her small form before carrying her to the pine bough bed they had prepared. "She carries a heavy burden for one so young," Swift Elk observed quietly as Two Stars returned to the fire. "Yet her spirit remains strong," Two Stars nodded, settling himself with a slight wince as his wounded side protested the movement. "Stronger than many warriors I have known." Swift Elk added another branch to the fire, sending sparks spiraling toward the rock ceiling. "You have told me how you found her, but not why you chose this path. Most men, even honorable ones, would have taken her to the nearest settlement once immediate danger passed." The question was fair, though Two Stars had asked it of himself many times without finding a completely satisfactory answer. He stared into the flames, searching for words to explain a decision that had been born more of instinct than calculation. "When I found her in that cellar," he said finally, "something passed between us, a recognition. She had survived darkness and terror through her own strength. I had survived war and its aftermath the same way." He paused, considering. "Perhaps I saw in her what the eagle vision promised, not just a child to be saved, but a bridge between worlds that have known only bloodshed." Swift Elk nodded slowly, accepting this explanation. "The old ones speak of such things, spirits intertwined across the boundaries of tribe and color. They say such connections are rare but powerful, capable of changing the course of many lives. Or ending them," Two Stars added grimly. "Every day we travel increases the risk of discovery. The reward for her return grows as her grandmother's desperation increases." "And yet you continue north rather than east," Swift Elk observed. "Why not take her directly to this grandmother?" Two Stars sighed, feeling the weight of decisions made and paths chosen. A Cheyenne warrior traveling alone with a white child would never reach Pennsylvania alive. Every settlement, every fort between here and there would see only a kidnapper, not a protector. He gestured toward Sarah's sleeping form. The winter camps offered temporary sanctuary, a place to heal and plan before seeking a safer route east when spring comes. Two Stars observed this exchange with mixed emotions. The child's ability to overcome her fear of swift elk demonstrated remarkable resilience, yet he found himself unsettled by the growing ease between them. During the enforced proximity of the storm, Swift Elk had proven himself a valuable ally, sharing provisions, tending the fire while Two Stars rested his injured body, even using his own medicines to draw the growing infection from the bullet wound. But Two Stars had carried Sarah's safety as his personal responsibility for so long that sharing the burden, even with a seemingly trustworthy companion, felt strangely like failure. "The snow has stopped," he announced, returning from his inspection of the world beyond their shelter, "but it lies deep, perhaps to a horse's knee in places. Travel will be difficult." Swift Elk nodded thoughtfully, his weathered face grave as he considered the implications. The winter camps lie 4 days' journey in good conditions. In this snow, perhaps 7 or more. He glanced at Sarah, who was absorbed in her wooden horse, then back to Two Stars. "Your wound improves, but fever still comes with nightfall. The child grows thinner. These are not favorable signs for such a journey." The assessment, while accurate, stirred defensiveness in Two Stars. "We have come this far. We will reach the camps." Swift Elk studied him for a long moment, seeming to weigh various considerations before speaking again. "There is another possibility," he said carefully. "My hunting cabin lies perhaps a day's journey northwest of here. Solid walls, stored provisions, safety from both elements and pursuit." Two Stars frowned. "You said nothing of this cabin before." "It was not relevant before," Swift Elk replied simply. "The storm changed our circumstances. Now the cabin offers the best chance for the child's well-being and your recovery." Sarah looked up from her carving, her intuitive awareness of adult tensions evident in her expression. "Is it closer than the winter camps?" she asked, addressing Swift Elk directly. The Lakota hunter nodded. "Much closer, and warmer, with proper food and medicines." Sarah's gaze shifted to Two Stars, her blue eyes serious beyond their years. "Your side still hurts," she observed. "I see when you think I'm not looking." The simple statement caught Two Stars unprepared. He had underestimated both her observational skills and her willingness to voice uncomfortable truths. "The cabin could be a trap," he said, directing the comment to Swift Elk rather than acknowledging Sarah's concern. "Leading us to isolation where others wait." Swift Elk's expression remained impassive. "If I wished you harm, I could have acted during the storm while you slept. I seek neither the reward for the child nor glory from your capture." He paused, then added with quiet emphasis, "I offer sanctuary, not deception. But the choice must be yours." Two Stars moved to the entrance of their shelter, needing distance to clear his thoughts. Outside, the world glittered beneath a brilliant blue sky, the storm's fury transformed into crystalline beauty. But beauty could kill as efficiently as violence on the frontier. The pristine landscape before him presented lethal challenges for a wounded man and a child with dwindling supplies. Swift Elk's offer made practical sense. A secure cabin with provisions would allow Two Stars to heal properly before attempting the longer journey to the winter camps. It would provide Sarah with proper rest and nourishment after days of inadequate food and constant movement. Yet years of survival had taught Two Stars to question unexpected generosity. The Lakota hunter seemed genuine, but appearances had proven deceiving before. "If I say no," Two Stars asked without turning around. "Will you still guide us toward the winter camps?" "Yes," Swift Elk replied without hesitation, "though I believe it the lesser path." Two Stars returned to the fire, where Sarah sat watching the adults with the solemn intensity that had become characteristic of her since the massacre. She had lost the carefree innocence of childhood in that root cellar, replaced by a precocious awareness of life's fragility and the complexities of adult decision-making. "What do you think, little one?" he asked her, offering a respect few would extend. To a 7-year-old, "Do you trust Swift Elk's cabin?" Swift Elk absorbed this reasoning in thoughtful silence. After several moments, he spoke again, his tone carefully neutral. "There is another possibility you have not considered." Two Stars looked up sharply, instantly alert to the change in the hunter's manner. "The child could stay with you," Swift Elk continued, "among the people, learning our ways. Many orphans have been adopted thus, even those born to enemy tribes. She is young enough to adapt, to become truly of the people." The suggestion struck Two Stars with unexpected force. He had been so focused on the immediate challenges of their journey, on fulfilling his promise to reunite Sarah with her grandmother, that he had not allowed himself to consider alternatives. The image rose unbidden in his mind. Sarah growing up in the winter camps, learning the language and traditions of his people, her initial strangeness giving way to acceptance as she matured under his guidance. He pushed the thought away firmly. She has family searching for her, blood kin who mourn her loss. A grandmother she barely remembers, Swift Elk pointed out, against the man who saved her life, who has protected her through danger and hardship. Which bond is stronger? "It is not a question of strength, but of right," Two Stars replied, an edge entering his voice. "She is not mine to keep." Swift Elk raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I meant no offense, brother. I merely offer the wisdom of our ancestors, who understood that family is created by sharing trials as much as by sharing blood." Two Stars did not respond immediately, his thoughts in turmoil. The Lakota hunter had articulated an option he had refused to acknowledge even to himself. The growing attachment he felt toward Sarah, the protective instinct that transcended mere responsibility for her safety. "She belongs with her own people," he said finally, as much to convince himself as Swift Elk. "That is the only path that brings healing rather than more pain." Swift Elk accepted this decision with a respectful nod, though something in his expression suggested he remained unconvinced. "Sleep now," he advised, changing the subject. "I will take first watch. The storm has passed, but night brings its own dangers." Two Stars settled himself near Sarah, close enough to provide reassurance if she woke with the nightmares that still occasionally troubled her sleep. Despite his exhaustion and the lingering effects of his wounds, sleep proved elusive. Swift Elk's suggestion had disturbed something fundamental in his understanding of their journey's purpose. He had never considered keeping Sarah permanently, had he? The thought seemed a betrayal of the trust her vulnerable state had placed in him. Yet he could not deny the protective bond that had formed between them during their shared ordeal. In saving her life, had he somehow claimed it as his responsibility in a deeper sense than he had acknowledged? Such questions pursued him into uneasy dreams, where eagles circled endlessly above a landscape divided between snow and fire. There, cries neither guidance nor warning, but simple witness to choices that could not be unmade. Dawn arrived with crystalline clarity, the rising sun transforming the snow-covered landscape into a blinding expanse of white, broken only by the dark silhouettes of pines and distant ridgelines. Two Stars woke to find Swift Elk already outside the shelter, studying the terrain ahead with practiced eyes, while Sarah still slept peacefully beside the banked fire. "The day promises fair weather," Swift Elk reported as Two Stars joined him. "But the snow lies deep in the valleys. We should reach my cabin by nightfall if we maintain steady pace." Two Stars nodded, surveying the pristine wilderness before them. No tracks marred the snow's surface. No smoke rose from distant campfires to indicate human presence. For this moment at least, they existed in perfect isolation, suspended between the dangers behind and the uncertainties ahead. "We should wake the child," he said, turning back toward their shelter. "There are many hours of travel before darkness falls." Sarah woke quickly, the hypervigilance of trauma having replaced her childish tendency to linger in the warm cocoon of sleep. She accepted the small portion of cornmeal mush that comprised their breakfast without complaint, then helped dismantle their temporary camp with the efficiency Two Stars had come to expect from her. By the time the sun had fully cleared the eastern ridges, they were underway. Swift Elk breaking trail through the deep snow on his snowshoes, Sarah riding the paint mare whose greater height allowed her to navigate the drifts, and Two Stars following behind, alert for any sign of pursuit despite the unlikely prospect of hunters venturing this far in such conditions. The day passed in the rhythmic pattern of winter travel, periods of silent progress punctuated by brief rests to check their bearings and allow the horse to recover. Sarah remained unusually quiet, her gaze fixed on the winter landscape with an intensity that suggested she was committing every detail to memory. During one such rest, as Swift Elk scouted a path through a particularly dense thicket, she finally spoke the thought that had evidently been forming since dawn. "Could I stay with you?" she asked Two Stars directly, "instead of going to grandmother?" The question, echoing Swift Elk's suggestion from the previous night, caught Two Stars unprepared. He studied her face, searching for signs of fear or uncertainty. That might explain this sudden question, but found only solemn inquiry in her blue eyes. "Your grandmother searches for you," he replied carefully. "She mourns, believing you dead with your parents and brother. It would bring her great joy to discover you live." Sarah considered this, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. "But she is a stranger now. I was very small when we left Pennsylvania." She hesitated, then added with Swift Elk's announcement hung in the frigid air, its implications immediately clear to Two Stars. Someone had found the cabin before them. Perhaps hunters taking shelter from the storm, perhaps those specifically pursuing Sarah. "How many?" Two Stars asked, his hand instinctively moving to Redfern's revolver. "Impossible to tell from the smoke alone," Swift Elk replied, "but it rises straight and steady. A fire well tended, not newly lit." Two Stars studied Sarah, noting the exhaustion evident in her small face. The paint mare, too, showed signs of fatigue after hours of struggling through deep snow. Continuing their journey without rest or proper shelter was becoming increasingly dangerous, yet approaching an occupied cabin carried its own deadly risks. "We need to know who waits there," he said finally. "I will go ahead while you remain with the child." Swift Elk shook his head firmly. "This is my territory, my cabin. I will scout while you protect the little one." Before Two Stars could object, Swift Elk had removed his bulkier outer garments, leaving only those that would allow silent movement through the forest. "There is a hollow beneath a fallen pine, 200 paces east," he instructed. "Take shelter there. If I do not return by sunset, continue north. The main winter camps lie 3 days' journey following the ridgeline." Without waiting for acknowledgement, the Lakota hunter slipped away, his movements fluid and practiced as he vanished among the trees. 2 Stars helped Sarah down from the mare, noting the confusion and fear in her eyes. "We must wait," he explained simply, leading her toward the hollow Swift Elk had described, "until we know if the cabin is safe." The shelter proved better than expected. A massive pine had fallen against a rock outcropping, creating a natural lean-to beneath its trunk with room for both humans and horse. 2 Stars settled Sarah inside with her mother's quilt wrapped around her shoulders, then tethered the mare where she could be quickly retrieved if flight became necessary. "Is it the bad men?" Sarah asked, her voice barely audible. "The ones." "Who shot you?" 2 Stars arranged branches to further conceal their position before answering. "Perhaps, or simply travelers seeking shelter like us." "What if Swift Elk doesn't come back?" The question pierced 2 Stars with its directness. The child had experienced too many losses already to accept comforting lies, yet the truth offered little comfort. "Then we continue our journey," he replied, honestly, "to the winter camps, where my mother's people will welcome us." Sarah absorbed this with the solemn acceptance he had come to expect from her. "I'm not afraid," she said after a moment, though her small hands clutched the eagle medicine pouch Mourning Dove had given her. "Not when I'm with you." The simple declaration of trust settled like a weight on 2 Stars' chest, both burden and blessing. He checked his weapons again, Redfern's revolver with its 6 precious bullets, his hunting knife, the tomahawk he carried at his belt. If Swift Elk did not return, they would face days of difficult travel with dwindling supplies, increasing the likelihood that Sarah would experience fear and hardship, despite his best efforts. Time passed with excruciating slowness as shadows lengthened across the snow. 2 Stars maintained vigilant watch from their shelter, dividing his attention between scanning for Swift Elk's return and listening for any approach from other directions. Sarah drifted into exhausted sleep beside him, her small body gradually relaxing as fatigue overcame anxiety. 2 Stars arranged the quilt more securely around her, struck again by how thin she had become during their journey. Children her age should have rounded cheeks and boundless energy, not the gaunt faces and careful movements that spoke of prolonged hunger and stress. The sun had nearly touched the western horizon when 2 Stars finally spotted movement on the ridge above them, a single figure approaching in the distinctive gait he recognized as Swift Elk's. The Lakota hunter moved with unhurried purpose, suggesting neither immediate danger nor complete safety ahead. 2 Stars gently woke Sarah, whose instinctive flinch at being touched gave way to relieved recognition when she saw Swift Elk's approaching form. Together they emerged from their sheltered hollow to meet the returning scout. 4 men occupy the cabin, Swift Elk reported without preamble. Army scouts, not bounty hunters. They fly the blue coat flag and maintain military discipline. 2 Stars frowned, absorbing this unexpected information. Regular army, this far from the fort? Swift Elk nodded. Special patrol, searching for warrior bands that might threaten settlements. The storm caught them, as it caught us. He paused, glancing at Sarah. Their leader is called Parker. He spoke your name. 2 Stars felt a cold that had nothing to do with the winter air settled in his stomach. Captain Daniel Parker? Another nod from Swift Elk. He said you served together in the white man's war. When I observed them, they studied maps and spoke of searching for Cheyenne, who attacked homesteads. The revelation altered their situation dramatically. Daniel Parker had indeed served with 2 stars during the Civil War, a fair-minded officer who had treated native scouts with unusual respect. If any military man might believe 2 stars' account of finding and protecting Sarah rather than kidnapping her, Parker would be among the few. Yet approaching armed soldiers with a child believed. Kidnapped by hostile Indians remained perilous, regardless of past connections. A single nervous soldier with an itchy trigger finger could end their journey permanently. "You know this blue coat?" Swift Elk asked, studying 2 stars' reaction. Yes, he was a good officer, honorable in battle, respectful to all scouts regardless of color. 2 stars hesitated, weighing alternatives in his mind. But that was years ago, in a different war. He spoke your name with respect, Swift Elk offered, not as an enemy. Sarah, who had been listening to this exchange with characteristic attentiveness, suddenly spoke. "The soldiers will take me to grandmother?" The question cut to the heart of their dilemma. If Parker could be trusted, the soldiers offered the most direct path to returning Sarah to her family, a journey protected by military escort rather than continued flight through winter wilderness. Possibly, 2 stars acknowledged. If they believe our story. Sarah's gaze moved between the 2 men, her young mind visibly processing the complex situation. Will they hurt you for helping me? The question revealed her deepest fear, not for herself, but for the man who had protected her through their shared ordeal. 2 stars felt a surge of fierce protectiveness mingled with pride at her courage. They might try to separate us, he admitted, but Captain Parker knows me. He might listen where others would not. Swift Elk, who had been silently observing their exchange, spoke again. There is another approach possible. He pointed toward the western ridge. My summer hunting camp lies a half-day's journey beyond those hills. It offers less comfort than the cabin, but sufficient shelter to survive until your wounds fully heal. From there, we could still reach the winter camps. The unspoken alternative hung between them, continuing their original plan, avoiding the soldiers entirely, and thereby extending Sarah's journey by weeks or possibly months before she could be reunited with her grandmother. 2 stars studied the child's face, seeking guidance in her expression. Her blue eyes held complete trust, yet also the weariness of one pushed beyond normal endurance. The bonds forged between them during their journey were powerful, but was it right to extend her separation from her blood family when a faster path had unexpectedly appeared? "What would you choose, little one?" he asked finally, offering her the dignity of participation in this crucial decision. Sarah considered the question with surprising thoroughness. "The soldiers might help us," she said slowly. "But they might also hurt you for being Cheyenne." She twisted the edge of her quilt in small fingers. "I don't want to leave you." The simple declaration crystallized something in 2 stars' mind. Throughout their journey, he had viewed their eventual separation as inevitable, a necessary conclusion to their shared ordeal. Yet here was this child, who had lost everything, expressing willingness to extend her difficult journey rather than risk harm to him. Such loyalty deserved equal honor in return. "We will approach together," he decided. "If Parker is the man I remember, he will listen before acting. If not—" He exchanged a meaningful glance with Swift Elk. "We withdraw immediately and take the western path." Swift Elk nodded, understanding. The unspoken strategy. He would remain concealed, ready to provide covering fire or distraction if the encounter turned hostile. "The soldiers have posted no sentries," he reported. "They believe themselves alone in this wilderness." 2 Stars checked his weapons one final time, then concealed Redfern's revolver beneath his coat. Approaching armed men with visible weapons would guarantee a hostile reception. He helped Sarah remount the paint mare, whose greater height would make the child immediately visible to the cabin's occupants, a deliberate choice to demonstrate peaceful intentions. "Remember," he instructed Sarah quietly, "speak only truth when questioned. Your honest words will carry more weight than any explanation I could offer." The child nodded solemnly, her small hands gripping the mare's mane with determination despite her obvious exhaustion. 2 Stars took the lead rope and began walking toward the cabin, leaving Swift Elk to disappear once more into the forest shadows. The final approach to the cabin unfolded with agonizing slowness. 2 Stars deliberately made their progress visible and audible, allowing the soldiers ample opportunity to observe their advance. By the time they emerged into the small clearing surrounding the structure, the cabin door had opened to reveal 4 armed men in the distinctive blue uniforms of the U.S. cavalry. "That's far enough," called the tallest of the 4, a Spencer carbine held ready in his hands. "Identify yourself." 2 Stars halted the mare at the edge of the clearing, keeping his movements deliberate and unthreatening. "I am called 2 Stars," he replied in clear English. "I served with Captain Daniel Parker's scouts during the war between the states." Second soldier emerged from the cabin doorway, a man of medium height with a cavalry officer's insignia and a neatly trimmed beard going grey at the edges. His eyes narrowed as he studied 2 Stars, recognition gradually replacing suspicion. "By God," he said finally, "it is you, the Cheyenne scout from Antietam." He gestured for the other soldiers to lower their weapons, though they did so with obvious reluctance. "What brings you to this wilderness, 2 Stars, and with a child, no less?" 2 Stars felt Sarah tense on the horse beside him. The moment of truth had arrived. Their future would be determined by what happened in the next few minutes. "The child is Sarah Bennett," he stated clearly, "sole survivor of the homestead attacks west of Fort Kearney. I found her hidden after her family was killed and have been bringing her to safety." Parker's expression shifted to one of astonishment. He took several steps forward, studying Sarah with newfound intensity. "Bennett? Thomas Bennett's daughter?" He turned to one of his men. "Jenkins, bring me that notice from headquarters." The soldier disappeared into the cabin, returning moments later with a folded paper which he handed to the captain. Parker unfolded it, comparing whatever was written there with Sarah's appearance. 7 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, he read aloud. "Last seen at the Bennett homestead before the attack." He looked up at 2 Stars, his expression guarded, but not hostile. "You realize there's a substantial reward for her return, and that every patrol in the territory has orders to search for a Cheyenne warrior believed to have taken her captive?" "I am aware," 2 Stars replied evenly. "I have been bringing her north to my mother's people for temporary safety before attempting to return her to her grandmother. In Captain Parker's scrutiny lingered on Sarah and 2 Stars, the tension in the cabin's clearing electric with unresolved possibilities. The other soldiers watched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, hands still hovering near their weapons. "You expect me to believe," Parker said slowly, that you've been protecting this child rather than kidnapping her. 2 stars met the captain's gaze without flinching. Would a kidnapper travel this difficult path, risk his own life to keep her safe? Sarah, sensing the delicate moment, spoke up. Her voice was small but clear. He saved me. When everyone else was gone, 2 stars found me in the root cellar and brought me here. Something in her direct honesty seemed to touch Parker. He remembered 2 stars from their days scouting together during the war, a man of uncommon integrity who had saved Parker's life more than once on the blood-soaked fields of Antietam and Gettysburg. "Tell me everything," Parker demanded, and so 2 stars did. He recounted the destruction of the Bennett homestead, his discovery of Sarah, their perilous journey north, the encounters with Mourning Dove and Jacob Redfern, and Swift Elk's unexpected assistance. Each detail was offered without embellishment, a testament to the truth of their extraordinary journey. Parker listened intently, occasionally exchanging glances with his fellow soldiers. When 2 stars finished, the captain removed his hat, revealing streaks of gray that hadn't been there during the war. $100 reward awaits her return," Parker said finally. "Her grandmother in Pennsylvania has been searching desperately." 2 stars felt Sarah tense beside him. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What do you want?" he asked her quietly, giving her the same respect he would offer any adult facing a life-changing decision. Sarah's blue eyes, which had seen more tragedy than most would witness in a lifetime, looked up at 2 stars. Then she gazed at Captain Parker. "Can 2 stars come with me? To make sure I'm safe?" Parker chuckled, a sound both weary and fond. "The Army doesn't typically escort orphans across the country with Cheyenne scouts, young lady." But something in Sarah's unwavering gaze, a combination of vulnerability and strength, seemed to move the captain. He understood, perhaps better than most, the bonds forged in extreme circumstances. "We can escort you to Omaha," Parker said finally. "From there, you'll take the train east to your grandmother. As for 2 stars..." He paused, weighing his next words carefully. "I'll ensure safe passage. No bounty hunters, no accusations." Swift Elk, who had been watching from the forest's edge, emerged silently. He approached 2 stars, speaking in Cheyenne. "The eagle's path continues. Your journey is not finished." The final leg of their journey was marked by an unexpected sense of hope. The soldiers treated Sarah with unexpected gentleness, sharing their rations and telling stories to keep her spirits high. 2 stars remained close, a silent guardian who had become far more than a rescuer. He had become family. In Omaha, as they prepared for Sarah's final journey east, 2 stars knelt before her. "Remember what Mourning Dove told you," he said softly. "Names carry power. You earn your name through your actions." Sarah clutched the wooden horse Swift Elk had carved, the eagle medicine pouch Mourning Dove had given her, and her mother's quilt, tangible connections to the extraordinary journey that had transformed her life. "I'll never forget you," she whispered, throwing her arms around 2 stars in a fierce embrace. Captain Parker watched this moment, understanding that some bonds transcend blood, culture, and the arbitrary lines humans draw between themselves. As the train whistle blew, promising Sarah's reunion with her grandmother, 2 stars felt both an ending and a beginning. The eagle that had first guided him to Sarah's root cellar circled high above the station, a final, silent witness to a journey that would become legend, whispered around frontier campfires. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. of survival, courage, and unexpected connection. The story of Sarah and Two Stars reminds us that humanity can bloom in the most unexpected places, that compassion knows no boundaries of race, culture, or circumstance.